Hello and welcome back to the final episode of the Politics of It All podcast special. Today I'm sat here with the president of the KCL Conservative Association, Shiva. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you to you too. It's great to be on, and hopefully you won't grill me as much as the politics relaxed people did.
We'll see. For you, what does it mean to be a Conservative? Why did you join the party and why have you taken the leap to represent it at a student level?
How I see conservatism compared to the other political beliefs is that you aren't really an ideologue. You don't believe in a book, and you don't believe in what a philosopher says, and you don't believe in some sort of utopia. What conservatism to me is, it's deeply grounded in what has existed before and what may exist in the future. As someone who's quite religious myself, I felt like it lent quite neatly into my beliefs. Mm-hmm. So as our ancestors have taught us in ages before, that wisdom is passed down onto the new generations to continue that forward. To quote Michael Oakeshott, it's you don't rock the boat, you keep it heading in a steady direction. And I think that's something that really I believe. I don't believe in trying to pull us into a utopia that's never really existed or may not ever exist. Yeah, it's just existing with what we have now and improving what we have with what we know and what we have at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah. Would you say that's more of a kind of one nation perspective as opposed to what one might see on the sort of new right of the party do have that utopia, sort of low taxes, low regulation?
Yeah.
There's a rift there.
I think that sort of belief can be tied into sort of any faction of the Conservative Party. I think with the new right, they are quite influenced by sort of neoliberal beliefs, and because they come from like that sort of in essence liberal doctrine, they can be considered utopian, and in that respect, it's not really compatible. But in any other strand of conservatism, whether it be not one nation or traditionalist, it can very much be applied. Yeah.
Interesting. And so you'll be going into this debate as the opposition party for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
How has this changed your society strategy? And in a weird way, is it a bit of a relief?
I think it definitely is a relief. Way back in March, when I was thinking about running for president, I was thinking about, oh God, I have to do the politics debate and I have to defend this party. But it's very much a relief. And it hasn't really changed on how our strategy will be, because we have that legacy of being in government. And we've only been out of government for a couple of months now. So it hasn't changed that much. We do have to defend ourselves. However, we are given a little bit more leeway to criticize others because, like, it's your turn now. So, I'd say we're staying about the same in terms of strategy, but we're given a lot more leeway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Those nerves when you were looking for the leadership in March may not have just been caused from defending the party, but probably from defending the society as well. Last year, there was almost never-ending list of KCLCA controversies, from fascist armbands at events, debate motions around sinking the boats. What was the atmosphere like within the society when they were being revealed?
It was very chaotic. You all might remember the British Empire motion.
Yeah.
When they initially tried to have that motion, about half the room walked out. So,
were you one of those?
Yeah, I was. Because people either thought it was unacceptable, or they were scared that, what if I'm caught at this debate, what's that going to say about my future career? And I completely understand that. And this year I've spoken to UCL Tories and LSE Tories and all of the other societies in London, and we've come together and said, like, this sort of toxic environment that has been fostered is simply unacceptable, and we have to get straight down onto it and clamp down on troublemakers.
Would you ever feel the need to apologise for what happened?
I don't see the necessity of me apologising personally, because I wasn't really responsible for anything that's happened. But as a society, I can say, I can definitely apologise, especially for things like an armband. It's simply just not there. And some of the rhetoric said it can cause offence, and it clearly has. On behalf of the whole society, I can apologise. Yeah.
What have you done now as president in these first few months to amend the culture and to bring the association back to something that people could feel included in.
Yeah, definitely. So the topic of the armband, so that wasn't actually caused by a KCL student. That was caused by a student from outside the campus, not even associated with the University of London. I think what that showed is that anyone can walk into our event and cause trouble and just walk out, and we have to pay the consequences. Checking for people's memberships definitely is one way of making sure that the right people get in and have a good time, whereas people who are looking to stir trouble are kept out. In terms of the actual rhetoric, so we're balancing a fine line here. So we want to ensure freedom of speech during our events. However, we also don't want to encourage things like calls for violence or any other sort of hateful rhetoric. And I'm still in discussions on how we should do this, but there is definitely a consensus that people who do call for violence against certain groups should be immediately ejected from the event, and perhaps if they are a member of one of our respective societies, maybe as from the society as a whole. Unfortunately, I mean, we haven't had much chance to put this in practice because we haven't had many important policies. However, at the ones that we have had, I'd say it's been a pretty big improvement from last year. Yeah. Definitely.
Have you changed the manner in which you pick the debate topics now? Do you consider the implications maybe?
Yes,
more?
Definitely. Usually how we choose a debate topic is what's going on at the moment. However, last year I have a suspicion that the motions weren't there for debate. They were more to see if they can stir the most trouble.
Yeah. I mean, Isaac, when he came on a Raw podcast, he said that he was shocked to see the motion go up on Instagram, the sinking the boats one. But it makes me think, if he didn't know about it, who was making these motions?
Well, I believe it was very much a UCL thing. I think it was posted on the UCL Instagram. However, I can't say for sure because at the time I was communications secretary, so I wasn't really involved in.
Rough job.
I'm sorry.
quite a tough job.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Just posting on Instagram, just like posting memes or whatever. I wasn't really involved in the decision making, and I guess what's happened between Isaac and the UCL president, that's something that is between them. But I can't tell you here now like who was responsible. But I think collectively it was all of our fault. The fact that we even thought about posting it. It's on all of us.
I suppose you've done a lot. You're trying to do stuff to change the processes, change the culture. Have you been in contact with the KCLSU? Are you making these changes known? Are you trying to get re-ratified?
We are still ratified. We're still a part of the KCLSU. We are just suspended, so that means that we just can't host events and access our bank account. We have spoken to the KCLSU in terms of appealing it. I'm a new president. I really didn't have anything to do with the previous administrations, but the appeal has been rejected. Especially, we were trying to use things like the Freedom of Speech Act. I think now we can't really use it because Labour's repealed part of the legislation. But we tried doing that, but they weren't really budging. So I've tried to get in contact with the university, but you know how university bureaucracy can be. We'll see how that goes. However, they have given us a date saying that when we will be reinstated. So I think it's next year, May. So it's not indefinite. If it was indefinite, I think I would probably have to consider drastic action, perhaps disassociation from the student union. But I think so long as we have a date and it's guaranteed that we'll be reinstated back then, I think that should be fine. It will give me plenty of time to reorganize the society as well.
Yeah. To round all this up, and after this year, there was still a bit of debate over whether you would be part of the politics debate, whether you'd be on podcasts like this, involved in the politics. We pride ourselves on pluralism and want to remove conservative voices from any debates. After the performance, especially the first debate last year, with the former president's comments towards one of the audience members, many people are questioning whether you should be here. What would you say to those people who are questioning your presence, and what do you say to students why they should actually join you guys?
The actions of one individual is not reflective of all of us. You might remember.
Did vote for that individual?
Yes, perhaps we did, but there was no way we could have said that he will definitely go up and say absurd things on stage. It was Isaac and Rishit up there, and Isaac said some of the remarks, but I think Rishit did a fantastic job of keeping himself together. So, of course, it's not reflective of all of us. Why should students join us? Well, obviously, we're one of the last bastions on campus of conservatism, so we provide a home for Conservatives to speak their mind on campus. However, we also aren't just a bunch of friends at the end of the day. Usually we say that the politics is secondary and the socials first. That's why we have loads of things like pub crawls and curry nights, is because we're not just a politics society, we are just a group of friends who get together and have a good time. There's two reasons to join us. If you are a conservative, welcome home. If you are not a conservative, that's fine. You can always come along to our events and just have a good time. Yeah. I hope that the worst has passed us in terms of, all of the scandals. So hopefully we shall be onwards and upwards from here on out.
Yeah. And now to sort of take it to national politics. Yeah. The Conservatives polled at just 8% between 18 and 24-year-olds. That is lower than Reform UK, the Green Party, the Liberal Democrats and Labour. What was your reaction on election night, and why do you feel the Conservatives have lost younger people? To be part of your plea to get more members. No?
Well, I think the general election results came as a surprise to no one. Labour landslide was nearly guaranteed. But I think when the breakdown of results came through a couple of days later, I think it really showed that the political consensus that Labour was hoping for simply didn't materialise. They won the election with less votes than Jeremy Corbyn did in 2019, and he only managed to cause a hung parliament. And on the topic of reform, that is quite unprecedented, for a party that hardly had a parliamentary foothold to go out and win 5 seats. It's quite unprecedented, and I think that is something that that the Tories do need to worry about. Especially considering the amount of young votes that they managed to get. And that leads on to your second question about young voters. I think the priorities of the Conservative Party did not align at all with young voters. I think the mentality was that they saw young voters as a lost cause, and that they will just vote Labour or the Greens anyway. So that's why they focused on, triple long pensions and national service. And so, of course, that's going to isolate young voters because they're the ones who are going to be feeling all of that. There was almost no reference to young people in the manifesto. I think the Tories have started to learn that. So I know that in Robert Jenrick's speech, he did mention about how young people literally just cannot afford a home and have to spend their 30s in their childhood bedroom. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a common story.
It's a grim prospect, but a reality for many.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping now that they can go off, reflect, and hopefully come back to young people with something that appeals to them.
Just to look at some of those issues that were discussed in the election, or someone who is part of the military, looking at a military career, what were your thoughts on the national service, and do you agree with that policy?
Well, I think it's something that many would call a red meat policy, something that the Tories will just chuck out because they know
it wasn't serious.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps you can say it's serious in the fact that, we have rising threats from China and Russia. In the circumstance that was that election, I think it was very much something aimed towards getting those on the right on the party. And if it was to come into fruition, I don't think many people in the armed forces would agree. We have always been a small army, but a small army that's professionally trained. So we undergo for soldiers, it's 15 weeks. For officers, it's 44 weeks. That's incredibly long time. And the reason why is because that we put an emphasis on good quality soldiers, and having something like national service sort of ruins that.
30,000 18-year-olds, you just don't want to be there.
Exactly, yeah. And in terms of morale, and it's just, I don't think it was very, very much thought through.
No. Yeah. And so we've been through an entire Conservative leadership race between Jenrick and Badenoch. Badenoch ultimately came out on top. Has she given you any hope of rebuilding the party? Do you think she can lead you into the next election and lead you to victory?
I was quite sceptical about Kemi Badenoch, especially her focus on cultural issues and sort of her immaturity during...
Very erratic language.
Yeah, exactly. However, during the speech, she did come across as someone who's quite well composed, does seem to have a plan. Even though if it's a bit vague, she has some sort of idea. Now that she's elected, perhaps we can actually get down and see how she does. I think it's a bit too early to call. I think she will do a good job. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got the cabinet appointments been coming in, shadow cabinets.
Yeah.
Priti Patel, shadow foreign secretary, Mel Stryfe, shadow chancellor. What do you make of these? Tough decisions. Only 120 to choose from.
Yeah, I think
entirety of the front bench, really.
I think that's probably one of her first mistakes. What myself and a bunch of others have realized is that she's only been appointing allies. For example, Robert Jenrick, I don't believe he got a cabinet position at all.
I think shadow justice, but pushed to the side.
Yeah, it got pushed to the side. So it's not, you'd expect foreign secretary or home secretary, but very much pushed to the side. It's a bit concerning, especially now we've divided the party and now we have to put it back together. Appointing allies in key positions perhaps might not be the wisest choice, but perhaps these divisions will heal over time.
Looking at lessons, do you think that a lurch to the right of the party, both Badenoch and Jenrick have been positioned on the right of the party, is that the correct lesson? Is that how you tackle reform, do you think?
It's a bit hard to tell. I think reform has to be dealt with. And I think the fact that they secured 5 million votes in the last general election is something to be concerned with. I mean, in my constituency, Uxbridge South Ruislip, who famously elected Boris Johnson, Labour won that constituency only because that reform split the vote between themselves and the Tories. Perhaps a lurch to the right, in theory, yes, it could regain Tory voters. However, I think there is a legacy of 14 years of not doing anything. Well, to the eyes of Conservative voters, lurching to the right by itself probably is not going to suffice. I think there's genuine questions to be asked to the Tories themselves, as saying that, okay, even if we lurch to the right, people are still not going to trust us. Why is that?
Yeah. And I suppose now looking at the Labour governments, have they impressed you on any metric, or has it been as you?
I can't say they have. I think Keir Starmer has been quite deceptive in his rhetoric during the election. He came across as a sort of very centrist, sensible sort of politician, but when he gets elected, he's already doing union payouts. Perhaps that's something that we should have always seen, but something that I'm certainly not impressed with. Labour, for the past 14 years, saying that, well, instead of putting the burden on working people, why don't we put the burden on the super wealthy? Well, now they're in government, they are instead putting the burden on farmers and pensioners.
Would you rather have seen wealth taxes?
I think a wealth tax is necessary. There has to be an incentive for a wealth tax. We are incredibly highly taxed in the UK. But that would be fine if our public institutions were amazing. However, this is not the case. So there's something going wrong here. So we're paying loads of tax, and that's somehow not getting into public services. There has to be a resolvement between where the tax is being paid and when that money is distributed to perhaps like red tape or
reform of the public services.
Yeah, exactly. A wealth tax is necessary, and if it has to be raised, which I think in this current circumstance it has to.
That's fascinating. We've had the Greens on here and the Conservatives on here. They've now agreed on the wealth tax.
Well, I mean, I consider I consider it just a pragmatic move.
But if you can use that to bring down other personal taxes,
exactly, So we're in hard times. We're in 102% of our GDP debt ratio. The only way we can raise money is by raising tax, especially now. In the long term, tax should not be our main source of income. We should obviously strive to get taxes lower. I mean, lots of our wealth is already disappearing to places like Dubai or the Cayman Islands or whatever. But at the moment, it is necessary. I only see wealth taxes as a temporary step into lowering taxes in the long term. With the Greens, they will probably insist that the wealth tax is a permanent thing. For me, it's a very pragmatic move. It has to be done.
On pragmatism, then, another big shock has just happened to the UK. Donald Trump has been elected. He's not a fan of the Starmer government. They say there's going to be a good relationship. I doubt it's going to be as good as potentially some other European leaders. Do you think that this will push the UK towards closer EU reintegration? And is that something that you would support?
Well, I think EU integration, to an extent, is probably necessary. I think our deal with Europe after we left was inadequate, and it's left a lot of questions, especially over Northern Ireland. So perhaps a deal akin to something like Norway would have been a lot better. It probably would push the UK towards Europe, because the point of Brexit is that we're going to separate ourselves from Europe and forge our own path. That hasn't really materialized. We've secured a few trade deals, yeah, sure, but it's nothing like what the Europeans have. And now that Donald Trump has been elected and he seems quite adamant on his non-interventionist policies, that will sort of leave Britain by itself. So there won't be American support and there won't be European support, so Britain will be left by itself. So naturally...
especially with the rising threat of Russia.
Exactly. So naturally it probably would lean towards more European integration. And we've started to already see that now that Keir Starmer's been trying to start to warm up to European leaders.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming on. My final question to you is what I've given to everyone else. Could you possibly sum up the other three parties in 3 words?
In 3 words. The thing is, I don't want to come across as rude. I know they've all been rude to me, but I want to be a bit different. Optimists, idealists, and people who just want to be left alone. I mean, it's not really that's not really 3 words, but that comes close enough.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. A recognition that their hearts are in the right place.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
It has truly been a pleasure as well.
And I hope you enjoyed listening and watching as much as we enjoyed speaking.